Ben 10 fans, after so long, we finally got a serious Ben 10 project in the form of Ben 10 Dynamite. So, recently, the co-creator of the Ben 10 show decided, I believe back then in 2024, that he would want to retell the story in a way it has been told. And, well, fast forward 2 years later, it's finally out. I made a whole short TikTok about it, and yeah, it was sold out almost everywhere I could have found it. But thankfully, a comic shop that was like a bit further away actually did have one. So thank you. So in today's video, I'm gonna be reviewing the overall first issue. This is gonna apparently be a 6-issue like limited series, and I'll do a 7th review on the overall series once it's all fully out. Each one's gonna release monthly, so if you want to catch up every month, go ahead. If you would like to see me review more comic books, or if you would overall just want to see me build my own superhero universe, make sure to like and subscribe. Actually, just subscribe, honestly. But yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna wear my Omnitrix. I have my Omnitrix on my wrist back then, but my first ever introduction was actually through the reboot, unfortunately. But yeah, without further ado, here are the pros and cons of the Ben 10 comic. The pros are, it's sticking to what it wanted to do. I know people overhate kind of the reboot, but let's all be honest, the moment we saw the first few clips of the reboot, I feel like there's a difference between when we set expectations versus what they're actually trying to go for. They weren't trying to, start past the original, but we're talking about the comic here. The comic is supposed to be something like the absolute title or the ultimate titles that Marvel and DC are pulling up, where basically just change the characters, like either from their origin or make them have their powers and turning points way later on in their life when they already matured. But for this one, it seems like they're just shifting the origin and shifting a few gears up a bit that the original didn't do at first. So I'll give it to that. So that's the expectation, to see how different, but yet how similar it feels to Ben 10 when reading this comic book. So the pros are, the art is actually pretty good. I do like the art style. However, some pages did feel like it was a bit messy. But if you look at any cartoon show, yeah, in the earlier episodes, your characters look more different than how they actually are. So maybe it was a key subtle point to eventually get their finalized designs. But overall, some pages did look a bit off. But as a story, it was probably one of the best new comic books I've read.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Definitely what stands out about this book is the fact that they change up the origin instead of keeping it down simple. In the original show, we saw that Ben actually got time to use the Omnitrix for his first 2 aliens. So in this variant of this story, the world government is actually aware and sees the Omnitrix ahead of time. And coincidentally, Max, Gwen, and Ben all camp in the same area that they normally do in the beginning of the original. This time, like I said, the government is aware that the Omnitrix is out, and as Ben wanders off on his own, being a little brat he is in the earlier seasons, he gets the Omnitrix strapped onto him. But before Ben could even use time for the aliens like he did in the show, the whole world government's after him. And apparently, by this, Max is aware that the Omnitrix is supposed to come. And another thing that was so unique about this was the characters felt a bit different. It felt like Max wasn't like the supportive parental figure he was from Ben and Gwen, but more like I'm gonna get tired of this, sorry bro, like him just, trying not to crash out on Gwen and Ben. And they use phrases like rage bait and FNAF references from Ben. It's weird, but it's Ben 10, and I did kind of like the fact they made him sort of like a Gen Z kid, so you know what? I'm okay with that. Or Gen Alpha kid. I don't know my generations. But we see in the story that these characters are a bit different, and that Max is aware of the Omnitrix, which could mean an exception of maybe the world was aware that aliens do exist. And Gwen seems more like someone that's into conspiracy theories about aliens too. So this could be a really cool dynamic that really happens throughout the course of this comic book. And I really look forward to seeing any further interactions when it comes to how Ben, deals with the world government after him, or if the world government goes after him. From this writing style, you could clearly tell that this is made by the co-creator of Ben 10, which absolutely love that idea. I like that it doesn't feel like it's trying to redo Ben 10. It feels like it's honoring the original series while also giving it its own unique identity. And sure, some people were a bit upset from what I've seen online that Ben only got to use a few aliens in such a short amount of time, considering that the Omnitrix had a pretty quick limit throughout this entire, issue. But honestly, to that, I'd say that in the span that they have of 22 pages, typically for average American comic book, and of course, you're not going to be able to satisfy art consumers. But let's talk about the aliens. Now, we only get introduced to two of these aliens, and that's Forearms and Heat Blast. I know the cover kind of baited us a bit into having all the OG 10 aliens, and yeah, we did kind of get baited a bit from this, but overall, we see early depiction of what these characters could look like. I really want to see Accelerator, bro. He looks so cool. Diamond Head looks like a golem. He looks like the ice golem from Clash Royale. That's like the first thing that reminds me of him. Speaking about Diamond Head, guys, when I flipped through the book pages and saw like these variant covers, I think they were, I saw this Diamond Head cover and I immediately thought, isn't this a Kaiju number 8 reference? I got the first volume of Kaiju number 8 as well, and I compared the two covers. It's the exact same pose, exact same red background, or maybe the exact same background. Maybe that was a cool hidden reference, or maybe they're just trying to aim for something original. But if it wasn't Kaiju number 8 reference, good at it, bro. At least that anime gets some recognition after all of it. But overall, the art is actually very stunning from what I could tell. It reminds me of something like Something is Killing the Children. Some pages do look a bit off, however, but honestly, I feel like it's just normal when it comes to cartoons in general. You know, in your earlier seasons, you're gonna, of course, get a lot of errors because your characters aren't finalized for designing. You know, take examples from your early cartoon episodes, and yeah, there's obviously gonna be some off frames compared to, you know, later seasons like this. But from what they did, it's so unique. It was unique in its own way. It didn't try aiming for like a Marvel-ish style or DC style. It had more of a vibrant color, a little like dark, little vibrant vibe. I can't describe it. Pick up the comic yourself. But it gives me that mystery, bloomy type of vibe. And what I'm really questioning is what the world government will do throughout this issue. And I did mention Ben did make a FNAF reference. And if you think I'm lying, well, here you go. Check it. But what I'm trying to realize is that what could this mean for Ben? Well, obviously, they're not going to execute a 10-year-old boy, okay? If they do, then this will be one of the darkest comics I've read. But for what we could tell, maybe this could be a potential parted ways of two realities. One, Ben works for the world government, which, yeah, this one I don't really see it happening. Or reality 2, which is most likely the most comic book likely option. The government captures Ben and has to run tests on him, you know. Something similar to, like, Weapon X, kind of, so it could go either one of those two ways. But honestly, I would want to see Ben's ruthiness and want to fight the world government just for the sake of wanting to fight them. So that would be cool. And Heat Blast looks so cool in this comic, okay? Heat Blast, to be fair, he was kind of overused. So was Forearms. There was like a whole meme debate saying like, oh, POV, how it felt when Ben didn't use the alien you wanted. But I'm sorry, Heat Blast looks so cool, bro. He looks like Cosmic Ghost Rider, and I absolutely dig it, bro. There's no better way they could have made any of these aliens as good looking as Heat Blast. So, with all this in mind, 22 pages, with all this included within it, what else is another pro? Well, a pro right now is actually when it comes to the pacing. The pacing did awfully feel fast, and I consider this both a pro and a con, considering that, again, it was a 22-page comic, so they didn't want to, like, bored out the readers, especially if it's an origin issue to a returning series. Like Ben 10, then, yeah, you, of course, had to keep it fast-paced to keep the audience eyes on you. But from what we did, it was very fastly paced, but that's also kind of a con within itself, considering that I feel like we didn't really get to stretch out most of these characters, and to be fair, I'm not really expecting that much when it comes to a single issue. These single issues are probably just made to be bundled up into those big volumes. So expect volume of Ben 10 Dynamite as soon as this whole thing ends, okay? I'm predicting it. But overall, the pacing felt solid, but at times felt a bit fast. We did get a lot of content when it came to this. We got our first look at Vilgax at the end of this chapter, and I absolutely love his design. Honestly, I kind of think it's better than the original design. I feel like him and Heat Blast were the ones that actually got like better overall designing when it comes to the original show. And judging by all this, it feels like it's going to be real life politics versus the galaxy, considering that Vilgax wants the Omnitrix, but in the original show, Vilgax wanted the Omnitrix because he wanted to see what it could do for him, but Vilgax wants the Omnitrix this time to see what it could do to him. So, what I'm trying to see is that, what potential thing is Vilgax going to, mutate himself to with the Omnitrix if he ever gets his hands on it, or what's his goal with it? Considering that it's not going to be like a selfish reason, it's going to be a reason that's going to change his body or something similar like that. So to that, I'd say that's pretty crazy. So does this actually kind of fit alongside Absolute and Ultimate? Definitely. Okay, so what I'm trying to compare these two is for the fans versus target demographic. And this one succeeds in both. Obviously, we have not had much to look forward to in Ben 10 outside of this comic. And even then, I'm not sure if the reboot finished exactly. But let's be honest. No Ben 10 fan has had anything serious to look forward to except fan animations or anything from the fandom specifically. But this feels like we actually got away from the Cartoon Network label, even though it's quite frankly featured in the cover. I feel like we're moving slowly away from the Cartoon Network label, and if Cartoon Network is in charge and what they do here, they're definitely giving these guys the creative freedom of what it takes to actually make this a separate story from its predecessor. Definitely, the origins did get changed up a lot, and we might get some future conflicts between the world government, Vilgax, and the Tennysons. So this is going to be a peak comic. I know I don't mention much of the character growth development, but I'll just say it here. I feel like we're awfully going to get some cool interactions between Gwen and Max about aliens and their personal conspiracy theorists. And I don't see Gwen saying any of these like Gen Z phrases or Gen Alpha phrases that Ben is referring to, considering that, she was awfully a bit too mature in the original series, if like that's like a hot take. But honestly, I like it. This comic overall feels like it's very mature, more mature actually than the original show. And I think that's what made Ben 10 so special, is that it didn't need a resource to work off of. They were building the resource and foundation that people know Ben 10 from to this day. If it wasn't from the original show, we wouldn't have such high expectations for this character. And to that, I'd say that's a great way to actually build a legacy off a character that isn't based off any founding resource. Now, time for my overall review. Out of 5 stars, I'd give Ben 10 Dynamite a solid 8 out of 10, okay? I really like this origin. I feel like the pacing and the art kind of kept it slowing down a bit. But overall, I think from what we had, this wasn't a bad issue of a comic book at all. Definitely pick this up. If it's your first introduction to Ben 10, I wouldn't say so to start with Ben 10 Dynamite. You definitely could, but I feel like overall these Ultimate and Absolute titles, and now I can officially say Dynamite titles, are exceptionally for the fans that understand the character's legacy and growth. Let's be honest, when One More Day came out, it absolutely ruined everything that was built up through. So when we got Ultimate Spider-Man, it felt like a break, considering that overall, we got to see that Spider-Man was a lot more mature. Marvel didn't stop him from growing as they do for the actual timeline. And I feel like understanding the character's foundation, then seeing these cool twists of things, just makes your experience so much crazier. If it wasn't for people knowing who Batman was, the internet wouldn't freak out as much when they would review the next Absolute villain. By the way, Absolute Robin looks terrifying. I'm scared for this Batman. But I think that's why it makes these titles so special, is that you getting to know this beloved character and seeing a lot of twists upon the author, yet it's so intriguing to me, in my opinion. And I made a video about that for my universe. But overall, 8 out of 10, highly recommend it. And if you would want to see me review issue 2 later on down the downline, it will be coming out, I believe, June 2nd. So I'll be on the lookout for that. This time, I will place a hold on my comic book shop, considering that I do not want this thing selling out as quickly as the first one and getting my hopes very high for this. But overall, great comic. Kudos to creators Joe Casey, or Cassie, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, and Robert Carey for making such a great book. I'm sorry, I'm not good with spelling in general. I'm so sorry if I messed up anyone's names, but overall, you too should be absolutely proud of what you made. And if anyone else had involvement, please be proud of this, considering that we managed to sell out copies of Ben 10 when Marvel and DC couldn't really sell out their Absolute titles and Ultimate titles just as fast. Thank you, and goodbye.